My dear people of the United Kingdoms of Tikar, Bamenda, Highlands, I greet you all. Today we are going to examine our current situation. Hypothetically, what the future looks like for us if we win the Amazonian war. What the future looks like for us if we remain in Cameroon. And what the future looks like for us if we restore the Tikar heritage. We are going to listen to Ayok Sesekotabe. We will listen to Isa Churuma Bakari and what is currently going on in the DRC. We will benchmark these conversations to help us have perspective on what the future looks like for us. I will begin with a reading that will serve as a foundation for this conversation. For years, some have called us Mogili, a word meaning slave. At first, I thought it was just an insult. But when I looked deeper into our history, I realized that word carries centuries of pain. Our ancestors were captured and sold. Our identity was wounded long before this present conflict. And to this day, that wound is still being used to divide us. The division we live with today were not born yesterday. They are the legacy of 3 turning points in our evolution. First, during the slave trade, coastal elites collaborated with foreign traders, capturing inland people, Tikar among them, for profit. Second, under colonial rule, the Southwest and Northwest were stitched together by foreign powers, not by shared trust or consensus. They were stitched together to facilitate the administration of Nigeria. Third, in the 1970s, oil was discovered in the Southwest near Limbe. This discovery shifted power in Yaoundé, dismantling the federal structure and weakening the Northwest institutions. We do not control that oil, yet the collapse of our autonomy followed this discovery. So we are going to listen to Ayok Sesekotabe and make some analysis. So follow this conversation carefully.
And the federation, the idea of a federal republic would never be called into question. And it would be such that as we go further in this country, the 2 statesmen of this country would always be from both sides of this country. I'm highlighting this because further on we'll understand why. Such that if the president of this country is going to be from the French region, the vice, or whoever is second, should be from the English region, and vice versa. That was 1961. Fast forward to 1972. But before 1972, something major happened, the discovery of oil. When oil was discovered in Cameroon, coincidentally, it was discovered in Limbe, which is, well, then it was called Victoria.
So to begin that conversation, we will realize that Mr. Ayok Sesekotabe acknowledges there was a federal system of government where power will alternate between the Anglophones and the Francophones. I want you to take note of that. The discovery of oil in the 1970s changed everything. He also affirms that if the federal structure, as it was written in that constitution, was honored, that federal system will not be in question. take note of that because it will help for this conversation. Let's keep listening.
Once oil was discovered, President Ahidjo decided then that no, he launched a constitutional amendment to change the country from the Federal Republic of Cameroon to the United Republic of Cameroon. Because under the Federal Republic of Cameroon, every state had autonomy to the use of its resources, of course, with a bit of it going to the federal government. So this manipulation happened until 20th May 1972.
So that happened until 20th May 1972. My people, if there was a federal system of government that worked, that means Foncha will not be blamed. But the distortion of that assumed federal structure that was not signed, it was not legally binding, let me use the right word, Ahidjo manipulated the federal structure. Fair? So if Foncha is being blamed for the cause of Southern Cameroons getting into a relationship with La République du Cameroun, when President Seseko Tabe clearly outlines the manipulation of that system done by Ahidjo. Don't you think there's a problem with that? But I want you to listen to what is briefly said afterwards. This was the last message I think Ayok Seseko Tabe had before he was being arrested in Nigeria. We'll listen to this and then benchmark everything, but take note of what you just heard.
Cameroon Concord News did a Vox Populi, and some people don't buy into the independence, the complete independence of the territory. Some say they are for federalism, others say they want some sort of decentralization policy to be implemented. Why is it that you as a leader opted for a complete independence and liberation of South?
This was an interview done in London, where Seseko Ayok Tabe was being asked, why did you declare independence? There are some people who are still federalist, like Agbobala, like the Joshua Osi, like the barrister Akeremon. Fair? Why did you declare independence? Let's keep listening.
Okay, if history is anything to go by, let me start by the camp of the ones you called, you said some form of decentralization. We call them the nationalists. They are the ones who say the way it is the way it has to be. We believe that most of such people are knocked off by fear, and some of them are pulled in that direction by sheer greed. Because if you go down the decentralization policy, it is 21 years old since Mr. Paul Biya signed the decentralization policy.
My people, the reason why I brought up this conversation, this is a society we are building. This is a country that we are all part of. It's not something to take lightly. And as a leader, you have to look 360. Because these are people that you will lead. Now, on your screen is a write-up written by someone from the Southwest. I don't like generalization, and I want you to take note of that. In my heart, Ayok Seseko Tabe is a warm, kind, and friendly individual by nature. I can tell from the way he speaks. What we are dealing with here are ideologies that will determine the future of people. Right? So whatever I'm about to say take him as a person out of the equation and deal with the idea that is being presented. Fair? Because we don't build societies by looking at an individual. We look at a concept. Now, on your screen, this is a write-up that says, Ngrafi people are traitors forever. Look at this fool who calls himself Julius Fundong. He says the UN will never give Ambazonia independence. Who sold the country in the first place? Jongu Foncha. It's an idea. The Bakwere people know how treacherous Ngrafi people are. So this is categorization, generalization of a people. He mentioned Foncha. He was not blaming an individual, but he generalized by mentioning Ngrafi people. But I'm going to deal with this as concepts, ideas, and not an individual. So take a person out of it. That is why they never joined your struggle. That's why the Bakwere people never joined your struggle. Bakwere people have suffered 64 years of provocation, insults, blasphemy, domination from Ngrafi idiot. These are very strong allegations. So they've suffered insult, blasphemy, domination from Ngrafi idiots and fools. Blasphemy, domination from Ngrafi idiots and fools from the time Jongu Foncha won EML Ndele in the election that took us to Cameroon till this day. So that is an idea. That is why Bakwere people will not support the Ambazonian cause. This is an issue that we are dealing with, my people. And when we look at a situation like this, we should ask questions, because every research that we have done is based on certain utterances, maybe insult, like they said Mogili, and then I'm realizing they sold us as slaves. They called us Ngrafi people. Then I went and researched. I said, oh, so we are not really brothers. Foncha sold us. Oh, I thought we were a team working together. If something goes wrong, we fix it. But if we draw a line and label the other people, then you tell them you are not part of us. Fair? Now, as we speak, let it be clear to everyone, there is no legal union treaty binding La République du Cameroun and Southern Cameroons. So if there was a federal system that was dissolved, we have to show the document that proves there was a federal system which ratified this union at the UN, that Foncha should be held responsible. You see how I come against Atanganji, right? We fix ourselves from within so that the outside looks good. Fair? Now, something I want to highlight about all of this. If this crisis was started in Bamenda, by now, those in the southwest would have crucified northwest. These are things some don't want to talk about. They want to be vague and fake, and then end up with pain that lasts for generations. But you bring them early on when you notice them, for everyone to make adjustments. I believed in the unity of this country, entire Cameroon. But I started understanding the incompatibilities from every angle. And then I started asking questions. I believed that the Ambazonians were right to break away. Because to fix a third world nation that has gone through all what we have gone through, you have to have an open mind to every idea. And then from that, you can be able to get to a place where you say, okay, I've heard you, now this is what we have. Okay, I think this one makes sense. Let's make progress. Including consulting our ancestors. Because we come from a society where we still respect those who came before us. If this crisis was started by Northwesterners, if the 6 military officers were killed in the Northwest and not the Southwest, by now, some in the Southwest would have crucified the Northwest. Some still say they won't join because it is Ngrafi people. When this crisis started in the Southwest, Ayok Seseko Tabe declared the independence of Ambazonia, and he's from the Southwest. Now, we've always believed we are one. And if something is wrong in the Southwest, it is our job to always come in or work as a team. You've heard it, oil was discovered in Limbe, not in Bamenda. That changed the federal system in Cameroon. My people, I want you to picture some of the things that are not visible to others at the surface level, so that you can see what is really going on when you look deep. So oil. So our institutions in Bamenda, the power camp, many of the institutions that were dissolved in Bamenda was because of the discovery of oil in the Southwest. So that federal system was dissolved, not because of fungi, because of oil that was discovered in the Southwest. Understand the totality of your history so that you don't go on in life accepting blame for something you're not responsible for. You can acknowledge some issues, but don't take responsibility for something that you did not cause. The election, the plebiscite, was 70.5% positive. That means Northwest and Southwest voted to join La République du Cameroon because everybody experienced igbophobia in Nigeria, where if you touch an item in the market, you are forced to pay. You must buy. That is what we came from. So there was no other option. 2 options. Join Nigeria or join La République du Cameroon. That should go down in record in history. To arrive at the conclusion of betrayal from an event like that, post-colonial nation, Cold War era, a Cold War was going on. So that is why I don't even blame the British. I don't really blame the world or the UN. Why? Because I understand the circumstances during that era. It was tough everywhere. The administrative cost was too high for Britain to continue maintaining colonies in Africa. You get it? So they had to abandon everything and walk away. This is where we find ourselves today. So, if we came to help, today we are the victims. We don't have oil in the Northwest. And now we are being labeled as the problem, and past grievances are resurfacing through labels and insult. We should step back and question what we are doing. Look on social media. There is Fabiano Deco from the Northwest shouting their lungs out every day in this cause on a name called Ambazonia coming from Limbe. Honorable John Ba Akuru is on his platform every day from the Northwest speaking on this crisis. Go look all the major media outlets promoting this cause. These are individuals from the Northwest. And it started in the Southwest. The Southwest man declared the independence, which has led to thousands of our people dying. And we are feeling this line of those in the Southwest distancing themselves from us. Their children are on TikTok doing the same thing. When people draw a line like this, step back and ask questions. And that is why the gods of our land, they did not make a mistake to go to the Highlands and establish a place there for us. They were never stupid. And in that research, that is when their spirits started confronting me, and I started asking some deep questions that helped me to find our Tikar heritage. But let's keep listening. You've seen what has been written. Let's keep listening. You have perspective. What does that future look like for us? Now, I want us to take a listen to what is happening in the DRC. You've heard that Joseph Kabila has been tried and sentenced to death. That is the former president of the DRC. We will listen to that story and then benchmark it and lay the first foundation so that we can look at what the future looks like for us. Let's take a listen.
Former Democratic Republic of Congo's president Joseph Kabila has been sentenced to death by a military court in Kinshasa in the DRC after 2 months of trial for colluding with the M23 rebel group in committing war crimes. Mind you, the trial and the verdict were done in absentia, which means he was put on trial and convicted without his physical presence in the court. Coups have been the standard for power in the DRC since the country's independence until 2019, and it has always been backed by either the US government or some European government, all because of the abundance of their natural resources. The Democratic Republic of Congo is widely considered to be the richest country in the world in terms of potential natural resources and wealth and diversity. And at the same time, ladies and gentlemen, it is one of the poorest countries in the world in terms of GDP per capita and human development. This paradox is what's termed as resource curse. And to a larger extent, ladies and gentlemen, all of sub-Saharan Africa is struggling with the same curse. The more an African country is naturally endowed with resources, the more their problems and ultimately a higher poverty rate. The West will be in your business the entire time, sponsoring coups and militias until they topple the leadership that stands the chance of bringing significant changes in that country. And in addition to that, ladies,
he just highlighted something very important, that the more a region has abundant natural resources in sub-Saharan Africa, the more there is the possibility of conflict and tension in that area. The GDP per capita in the DRC is under $800. Some sources say under $500 a year. The GDP per capita in Cameroon, I think, is approximately 1,650 US dollars. Most countries in sub-Saharan Africa don't have the mental fortitude and leadership structure to handle natural resources. Take note of that. So what does the future look like for us if you have Amazonia? There will be internal fight, and I've shared some with you. You betrayed the Southwesterners, those in the Northwest. So no matter what you explain, they will still go with that idea. You can't change people who think that way. And that is fair. They sold almost 200,000 people as slaves because the generalization of the whole idea of Foncha is like the whole Northwest. Don't trust a Graphi man. Now, how do you build a society or go to battle with someone that feels this way about you? Predominantly. How? So, the future will be filled with tension, fights. Look at what is happening in the DRC. That is the kind of future that you will leave your children in. That is exactly what that country will look like. Those who think they have properties, Southwest is so good and they have built a family over there, very soon they will be throwing bombs in that area. Study DRC well. Almost every region that we have explored across sub-Saharan Africa that has oil, there is tension there. Where our ancestors discovered for us was not a mistake. And they are waking me up to warn us, let us return back home, build a nation where they intended and had a purpose why they chose that place. They came to Bafia, around Yaoundé area, and moved to the Highlands. They never made a mistake. If we believe in those who came before us, this is time to heed to that. But let's keep listening. Is that fair? So we will look at what the future look like being in Cameroon. For now, you've understood what the future looks like if we finally get Amazonia. Again, given the tension that already exists, that we are trying so hard to undermine, it will be battle over oil. They will tell you, stay in your own area. Don't come over here. Even though you fought, your children have lost their life, you've given all that you have to stand by them. But yet, they will still blame you for something. If I'm walking with someone and something goes wrong, and they say, oh, what do we do? This is a mistake. Not even once have I heard someone from Northwest tell me Southwesterners started this crisis. Not once have I heard someone from the Northwest tell me that we are in this pain like this because Southwesterners started this crisis and the soldiers were killed in their land. Not heard it. That look at the pain Northwest is going through. We don't have oil in our land. And Ayok Sese-Kotabe has testified that 1972, in the early 1970s, when oil was discovered, that is when everything changed. Let's keep listening.
sponsoring coups and militias until they topple the leadership that stands the chance of bringing significant changes in that country. And in addition to that, ladies and gentlemen, is the corruption and cluelessness of the leadership of Africa. Many times, those who hold on to power have no idea or clue what to do with it. And those who have ideas have no courage to pursue for political power.
They are looking for.
He has summarized the dilemma of the African leadership structure. This is something we must acknowledge. Being blind to this is naive. The corrupt ones are the ones who get into power, and they play over the rest. The way we do that is change that narrative. That is why if you look at the global conflicts from the 19th century right up to the 20th century, it was white people fighting themselves to bring down those corrupt ones. Hitler was brought down by fellow Europeans. They said no to this kind of idea because he said the Aryan race was the superior race. So the Jews are to be blamed for their conditions. And because of that, they went on to write books, Mein Kampf, launch an attack on the Jews and other superpowers, and they rose up and said no and fought. They changed the dynamics. Most of the wars that have been fought is between Europeans, adjusting themselves over time, clarifying their doubts over time. You get it? Because this is what happened in ancient times. In the ancient times, like you've heard about the death of maybe Socrates, when someone is smart, gifted by God, and there's a problem in the community, the people get up and find that they have issues, and they say, oh, this man is the cause, and then they kill that man, and then they highlight their weaknesses and say that man was a bad man, so he deserved to die. That is the primitive society that most people live in. Now, you realize that it changed when Jesus Christ was killed. The people wrote the story. That's why you have 4 different gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, so that there is no confusion. This is the first time in history where the person that was killed, they made sure they highlight the qualities that embodied that individual. Like, this was a good man, sinless man, had done no wrong, yet you decide to kill him. So those who want to fight the idea that God can send someone to liberate us, they say, oh, this is what Christianity was used to enslave people. They bring all sorts of narratives. Oh, it's not really true. Oh, he had a girlfriend. They bring all those accusations just to downplay the qualities of those who liberate mankind. And this has been a pattern over time. That's why you see the day we rise up and start bringing down our own Hitlers, that is the day we find redemption. Christ dispelled all those myths of religion or traditions in antiquity when people are frustrated in society and they decide to destroy the innocent among them, or those who can bring them hope or perspective to move forward. We are still dealing with that. The day we rise up and start bringing down our own Hitlers, our own Mussolinis, right, our own Stalin, the day we rise up and start bringing down these individuals, that is the day our freedom will come. But there is still time. You can't do that overnight, because there are still many who support corruption, support corrupt leaders in Africa, in Cameroon to be precise. So that is what we are dealing with. But let's listen to a prophet who also said something about Joseph Kabila, and then we are going to move on to Minister Issa Chiroma Bakari, and then look at what the future looks like for us if we remain in Cameroon. Fair?
him now. This is the son of a former leader of a country. They want his head.
The pastor said he had a prophecy that there is a son of a former leader that they want his head. So he made a prophecy about that. So this is a prophecy about our future. And if we don't wake up, do you know what it meant like for the Israelites to leave Egypt? Because sometimes we read that story superficially. Do you know what it meant? It was like somebody leaving America. And God is calling you to leave America and go back and settle in some suburb in Cameroon. Leave the best country or the best civilization in the world. That is what it felt like. To obey that, you must have a strong will to listen to the voice of God and heed to that instruction, because that is all you know. The leeks, onions, good food here. Leave the buffet. Leave the car that you drive, the house, to a place where you don't know. It was a very tough decision to make for many. I want you to imagine that. Yes, there's slavery here, but at least I saw the food. Fair? Let's listen to Minister Issa Chiroma Bakari explain something about the 92 election, and then we'll benchmark that now with what will happen if we remain in Cameroon. Fair? For the Tikar people, we'll benchmark on both sides, but this is for you.
Even all the ordinance combined today cannot solve this problem without a political will. Today you don't have this political will. We accepted to be minister in 1982, 92. Really, Fundi was elected as a head of state, but he was deprived of his victory, and he self-proclaimed himself as a.
He said Fundi won the election. He was supposed to be president, and he was defrauded of that election. I will explain why, but let's listen to that.
The elected of state. If you can recall, by that time, the state of emergency was declared. We had to choose between saving the republic, which was at the verge of collapse and the civil war, or to stick by our principle, which consists of saying no, Mr. Biya didn't win the election, and to join Mr. Fundi, and the consequence might be unforeseeable. So we decided to join the government to save legality, not legitimacy.
Did you hear that? They joined the government to save legality, not legitimacy. That is very, very important. What Issa Chiroma Bakari said should be a classic to be taught in African schools, in courses that has to do with political science. This should be taught. Just that one sentence. I can write a whole book on that. Minjon Fundi won the election. They used legal instruments, fraudulent legal instruments, to defraud him of that election. And they went along with that. I said, just that statement, a whole book can be written on that and taught in schools across Africa. Now, if you all as a government know the truth, and yet you use fraudulent legal instrument to deprive a candidate that won the election. What does that say about Cameroon? And you all went along with that. So I tell you, the good ones are always silenced. They look for the bad one and they all support him. The people had the will to choose somebody that could lead them. That is why I'm not really mad at the population in this country, because I understand the pressure that some will be lured into corruption, not out of their will, because it has become a culture. You either play by that game or you are being sidelined. Now, what will happen if we stay in Cameroon? Number one, it is going to be tense on the Anglophone zone, but it's going to be worse for the Southwesterners. I mean, it will be terrible for those in the Southwest. Why? Let me explain. But did you know that the capital of Cameroon was in Douala? Yeah, initially the capital of Cameroon was in Douala. The Germans moved it in 1901 to Yaoundé, but the capital was there, right? So if you look at Yaoundé, that gave Paul Biya what we call geopolitical leverage. So now he had the leverage to at least assume responsibility and control the military the way he does, because he comes from that area. So that is geopolitical leverage. Fair? Now, what will happen? If you look at the way this country is structured, it started in the north, right? The president came from the north, Amadou Ahidjo. Before he came to power, what happened? You heard about UPC. They had to fight. 300,000 plus Bamileke people were targeted and eliminated for Amadou Ahidjo to come to power. No matter what you say, the Bamileke people have never forgotten that. The Douala people have never forgotten that. Some are still on exile as we speak. Some came to the northwest and the southwest. So the fear has always been what will happen. And Yaoundé worked with Amadou Ahidjo against these people. Fair? So that is why you see Maurice Kamto cannot really be accepted to get in now, because tension is still in the air. Sometimes they wait for 100 years to see if that idea will die away before you can be accepted to lead, because now the fear is you might have tendencies of revenge and things might get bad. What happened? There was a coup staged when Ahidjo said, oh, I was sick. Oh, Paul Biya, can you be in power for some time? Let me see if I get better. And all of a sudden, Paul Biya got in. Before you realize, it's like, nah, Ahidjo, I'm in charge right now. Bye. What happened? There was a coup. An attempted coup in Cameroon that failed. Within 48 hours, that coup was crushed, right? In Cameroon, staged by the North. That is how Issa Chiroma got himself in prison and then was released, called and made a minister in that country. For peace sake, one thing you should realize is because of the UPC, the Bamileke people paid dearly for that. Because of this coup on Paul Biya's life, the North has paid dearly for that till date. If you've traveled to the North, you can testify what I'm saying. You can testify on what I'm sharing here, that the economic conditions in that area is terrible. Schools terrible. And you ask why? This is punishment for an attempted coup on the president's life. Because sometimes when we are talking all about the Anglophone, Francophone crisis, we don't understand the totality of what has happened in this country and how each group feels about another. $300,000 Bamileke people attempted coup. almost 1,000 people died because of that coup. And they said 70, but almost 1,000 people died because of that attempted. Some people were placed on firing squads to set an example so that the rest learn never to try it again. So this is the dynamics. Now, what will happen if we remain in Cameroon, or if power alternate goes back to the north? There is a high chance the presidency might move to Douala, because the presidency of Cameroon moving to the north, I don't think that is something that might happen if Issa Chiroma wins. So the presidency might move to Douala or to the north, because the presidency being in Yaoundé and the Beti Boulou people still have leverage, right? Because geopolitics. So they can probably stage a coup against Issa Chiroma Bakari if things go wrong. That is Cameroon for you. Sure, you've never seen it. There is a high chance, because of the number of soldiers that have died in the Anglophone zone, there will be a revenge factor, systematic revenge on those in the southwest, predominant. Those in the northwest will be punished as well. But if you look at the role Atangan Jipo is playing in this government, that might lighten things up. This is if we remain in Cameroon. It's an option. If we remain in Cameroon, because of the role that Atangan Jipo is playing in this government, right, to show the government that he will put the people of the northwest in order, there is a high chance the systematic punishment in Cameroon might not be that severe, but it's going to be terrible on those who started this crisis. That is the history of Cameroon. It's always like that. Those who always start a crisis in this country, they are always punished. It is a cycle. And again, there is oil in the southwest, which makes it worse. So we are seeing a future DRC here, if care is not taken. Are you getting it? So, given where we find ourselves, Tikar people, what would the future look like if we build the United Kingdoms of Tikar? Let's listen to another clip, and then we will look at what the future looks like when we find ourselves. And this is what Ireland did. In a confused society like this, find yourselves. You connect with your ancestors. When you are about to take a flight, when you get into that plane, the first thing the flight attendants will do, they will make an announcement. They will tell you that in case there is an emergency, make sure you put on a safety mask first before you help someone else. If not, you will not even have the air to breathe to help that person. So put on your safety mask first. I know you are good, you have a big heart, you really want to help, but put on your safety mask first. Let's take a listen.
You see,
so in the north, those are young people on the streets. They've picked up stones. They don't want CPDM in the north anymore. They preserved this presidency because of legality, fraudulent legal instruments to defraud a candidate of their victory. You're all sitting on blood. That is Cameroon for you. To those who are hoping that the UN will come save us, I want you to listen to Zelensky. This is the president of Ukraine. A speech he made at the UN. Very powerful. And got a sound bite, and I want you to listen to. And then we look at what the future looks like for us. The United Kingdoms of Tikar.
The 21st century isn't much different from the past. If a nation wants peace, it still has to work on weapons. It's sick. But that's the reality. Not international law, not cooperation. Weapons decide who survives.
He said the past hasn't changed from the present. If a nation wants peace, if a people want peace, they must secure their weapons. Not international law. The national community will save you. He has all the backings of the international community, but yet Ukraine is still under siege. Let's listen.
Excellencies, you know perfectly well international law doesn't work fully unless you have powerful friends who are truly willing to stand up for it.
The international law system doesn't work if you have powerful friends that can stand up to it. So a reliance on international law is a weakness. This war is a brutal war, but it's an amazing war at the same time if you understand how it works. Like I said, these things are so easy to grasp because if you have a mastery of 5,000 years of human history, understand what 5,000 years of human history look like, it is easy for you to go through this wall in peace. The wall is a beautiful place. When you don't understand it, it is complicated. You know, it's like that cell phone that if you show your grandmother, it'll be tough for her to operate it. But you, like, bam, 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 because you know how to operate it. That is how the wall is. Fair? So...
And even that doesn't work without weapons. It's terrible, but without it, things would be even worse.
So he says, even with the powerful friends that you have around the world, it's not a guarantee. You still need to defend yourself. You see why I stay away from the idea of international community. We build alliances, we understand the relevance of alliances, strategic partnerships, bilateral relationships, but at the end of the day, you have to protect yourself. Relying on the UN, relying on La Republic, this is Ukraine. I mean, I've seen the donations in this country, America, to support Ukraine. If the president can stand before the UN Assembly and make a speech like that, you should understand what that means. And if you're fighting with people that look at you as a traitor, you should also understand what that means. Morally, you are crippled. And if you lose the moral fortitude, you fail. Anyway, that is what Sun Tzu taught us in the book, The Art of War. The moral ground is the most potent foundation for any liberation movement. Let's keep listening.
There are no security guarantees except friends and weapons.
I mean, salute. He couldn't say it any better. Now, I want us to listen to Peter Thiel. You know, you've probably heard about PayPal. These are the individuals who shaped this world that we see today. Some of the greatest minds. This was the early individuals who invested in Facebook. They started PayPal, the Elon Musk team. So let's listen to Peter Thiel. He said something so profound that I thought I'd share with you. It will help us understand what will happen if we build the United Kingdoms of Tikar. Let's take a listen.
In in the Bible, the crowd is always wrong. The crowd is always crazy. It is mad. It's, you know, the Tower of Babel. It's in part, it's the unanimity.
The Israelites
it's the unanimity. It's
he said, if you look into the Bible, the crowd is always wrong. Always wrong. One thing you should understand about Peter Thiel is anything that comes out of the mouth of these individuals, take it serious. I mean, I don't play when he says something. That team, there are about 9 of them. They shape the world that you see today. Do you understand? From LinkedIn, Facebook, PayPal, every one of them are very successful, and they have shaped Google. They have shaped how we see the world today. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Sometimes when I'm thinking about something, I benchmark my ideas with their ideas, and it helps me have perspective. You know, my friend, sometimes you study too much, have a lot to say. Now, how do you, in a 30-minute conversation, take what you have in your head through a video like this into the mind of someone else on the other side, hoping that they can grasp at least what is in your head? It's a lot of work, right? And sometimes you can misinterpret what I'm saying from a soundbite of a sentence when I have an encyclopedia of knowledge about what I've studied, and I'm attempting to articulate in a way that you can have in your mind what I have in mind. But let's keep listening.
And Enlightenment rationality, it's always, you know, democracy is good, the more people.
So he's talking about enlightened rationality, like democracy is good because of enlightened rationality. So it's not population that wins the vote, but the rational population that wins the vote. So the population that wins the vote should be rational, enlightened democracy. But I think he expatiates better on that, and so you can grab the point and at least understand what I'm talking about. Fair?
Vote for something, the more rational it is. Although, you know, at some point you get 99.99% of the people who vote for something, and you're in North Korea. And so, you know, it's a very important question. When do you go from wisdom of crowds to the madness of crowds? And I think,
that's a very important question. That's for sure.
You could say it.
He touched on something very important, right? Like during this campaign, you haven't seen a politician educating the citizens about their history, about the future that connects with their history, so that they can have perspective on why they should go vote. It's all about, okay, what will I do? I'll knock down Paul Biya. The whole thing is about how does this one group form a coalition and bring down Paul Biya. The history of this country is so complex to summarize in knocking down Paul Biya. It's too complex. And so a citizen can arrive at their own decision based on information about their country. If not, it's just a crazy crowd, hungry crowd, emotional crowd. That is why no matter what you say, you still give 1,000 francs to someone, they will show up out there, they will try to support a candidate without understanding why, just because they're hungry, and will get pictures of that crowd, and so everybody wants this person. So he said if 99.9% of individuals vote against or for something in North Korea, imagine the end result. So crowd, my people, crowd psychology, mob psychology is dangerous. Crowd can be good and crowd can be terrible. A human being that is rational, good, if you speak with them one-on-one, they will say something else. If you put them in a crowd, all of a sudden they change. That is the danger of crowd. And you are confused that it's this same human being you were speaking to, and all of a sudden, now he's in the crowd saying something else. That is crowd psychology. There were individuals who said in the beginning, oh, they've paid me. The government have paid me. Now that they've seen me come against this system, now they can't go back and tell their friends, oh, I was wrong about that speculation. Oh, come under my video and say, oh, I'm wrong. Some have apologized. Many have apologized that, oh, I used to think you were bought by the government. Oh, now I see you genuinely want change. This is an evolution. It's a crazy country that we find ourselves in. And you have to ask questions, things they don't tell you. You have to research, study all by yourself to arrive at a certain conclusion. Because it's not all about picking sides and say, oh, now I'm this side. Okay, what about that side? Do you know the history of that side? Do you understand the intricacies of the philosophies governing that side that you're joining? You see what I'm saying? And that is what makes an informed, rational citizen. Let's keep listening.
It is the refusal to sacrifice others that characterizes Christ.
Well, definitely that, because
we're not willing, you're not willing to resort to violence. You're not willing to
use power.
You aren't willing to call down all the angels from heaven to stop the crucifixion. And so it's it's a refusal to sacrifice others. But and then maybe in some contexts you have to lay down your life for your friends. There are things like that happen, but I think it's much more, the anti-sacrificial intuition, and you have this already in a number of the Old Testament prophets. I think it's Hosea, where it's God desires mercy and not sacrifice. And then this is, these are sort of in a way you can think of the Old Testament law as a sacrificial set of laws. It's centered on the temple, and we have this sort of elaborate set of sacrifices. And then, in some sense, Christ replaces it with, love the Lord your God with all your heart and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself.
He touched on something very fundamental. Various schools of thought have different debates about this, but the fundamental issue about that is, even though we are fighting to restore our ancestry, we should have that perspective that at the end of the day, Christ is the ultimate sacrifice. Because like I told you, this is what reconciled meats in the past. The scapegoat philosophy. When society is angry, they look at someone, they take their life, and then the justification for that action is this individual was bad for society. They highlight the evil sides of that individual so that everyone justifies that there should be order in society because that individual is gone. And this is what society did over time. Just like if you see the Charlie Kirk assassination, what happened? Oh, he was a racist. Oh, he was this. He said this about women. He said this about men. He said this about black people. So that justification to suppress the moral qualities or the good qualities of that individual, this is a historical pattern. So Peter Thiel, in essence, is saying that Christ has paid the ultimate sacrifice, because it was through Christ that everything changed. That someone is sacrificed, and then the story that is written is this individual was innocent. And now you see where Christ being the Savior comes from. Do you understand? That God truly sent this man to us. Because he was blameless, yet he was crucified. And he had no flaw. Sometimes people get into Christianity, they don't understand why. Because throughout history, individuals have been sacrificed to bring social order. But this one, God sent him. How do we know? Because given the way this man lived his life, even the Romans that issued that decree for him to be killed said this man was innocent. That was the first time in human history. So Islam, emerging in the 7th century, tried to bring back some aspects of that old way that we used to look at those who were sacrificed. I don't want to make it too simple, but it's not something to simplify it in those terms, but you get the idea. So I want us to take a listen to another video. So even as we are fighting to build a nation, that is why we have to look at why are we here? Where did we come from? What did our ancestors want for us, right? And is this moral foundation that Ireland found themselves when the Roman Empire collapsed, the British, the Germans, they found themselves. And this is time for us, Tikar people. I believe with all my heart. We have to find ourselves. Go back to who we were. If people blame you, tell them thank you. I understand we are the problem. So let's go and build a country that we can be proud of. Yeah, I'm sorry that I hurt you. Sorry that Frontier hurt you. Hurt you so bad and placed you in this pain. But hanging around with you and you're grieving, I want to go fix myself, and probably we'll see each other again in the future. And all those things happen so that you can wake up. Even in the midst of this crisis, you can turn everything around for good and say, we see God showing us our friends in the midst of pain so that we can find ourselves. Fair? So it was not in a peaceful moment when God called the Israelites out of Egypt. They were in pain. They were slaves on a regular. And God called them out of pain. And there were many other communities. The Libyans, the Nubians, they were in there as slaves. You've heard in the media, black people are inferior, Africa is backwards, and all that. So a brother here made a response that will help us put everything together as we build and find our identity as Tikar people. He touched on it, and I found it worthy to add in this conversation why we need to find ourselves. We will never find ourselves in former British Cameroon. We will find ourselves in the United Kingdoms of Tikar. And this is a solid foundation that even your ancestors stand with you, and you can build a nation that you will be proud of. Let's take a listen.
When Europeans colonized Africa, they hadn't discovered the wheel. There's no two-story buildings. There's no writing. There's no written.
So all of these are lies, actually. So they haven't discovered the wheel. Yeah, let's check on that. There's no two-story buildings. That was for sure a lie. And there's no writing. That is also a lie. He told 3 lies.
Which missionaries had to go to Africa in the last century and invent it for the African people.
Utterly ridiculous. So number one, in terms of two-story buildings, we observed the pyramids in Egypt, and people are like, well, the Egyptians are not black, and Egypt's in Africa, but it's not in Africa. Okay, very good. So if we look at the Egyptian pyramids, where else can you find pyramids in the world, in this part of the world? Do you find them in Saudi Arabia, or do you find them in Mesopotamia? No, you don't. If you track back down that Nile, you go into a place called Nubia, and they too had pyramids, and pyramids are not what you would call one story because they go up quite high.
They found pyramids in Nubia. Tikar people, that is where you are from. And this is what we should understand about all the stereotype about Africa, black people in general. Slavery and slave trade changed how the world see black people forever. Changed how the world sees sub-Sahara Africa. Before then, the color of the skin was not a big deal. You were not measured based on the color of your skin. So in Cameroon, the coastal elites in Douala, Southwest, and Kribi are the ones who got involved in that trade. Penetrated the hinterlands, captured people from the hinterlands, and sold as slaves. So when that young white man is talking about, has to do with the narrative that was concocted after the slave trade to explain how they see Africans. So I was looking at the race theory and the concepts that were created after slavery and slave trade. So these ideas were created, manufactured after slavery and slave trade to justify slavery and slave trade. So the ideas were not generated before slavery and slave trade. They were generated after slavery and slave trade to justify slavery and slave trade. So they're like, okay, if these individuals could sell their own, they must be inferior. Because we went to the Japanese people, they said no. We went to the Vietnamese people, they said no, they won't sell their own. We went to the Chinese people, they said no. We came to we went to Ethiopia, a black country, they said no. That is why they regard Ethiopians today as, at least, these are decent human beings. They came to sub-Saharan Africa, almost all the coastal elites acquiesced to that trade. So they assume by default, these people must be inferior, and they started looking for every justification. It's just like when you meet people with big head, right? And they speak, and then you realize they are smart. You go meet the next person with big head, you realize they are smart. All of a sudden, you go around telling people, oh, people who have big head are very intelligent, right? Based on interaction and observation. So when they came, based on that interaction and observation, they could find theories to support what they saw and their experience. Is that fair? Yeah. So that is how slavery and slave trade created this narrative of black people being inferior. You look for scriptures to justify that even after slavery and slave trade. They looked for scientists to come up with theories and concepts. They had to study even animals to understand why we are inferior, which is terrible, because the American Psychological Association and the American Anthropological Association, they have done the research, and they said there is no biological proof that black people are inferior based on the color of their skin. Is that fair? So they went and looked at baboons, and they saw, oh, if you look at the baboons eat their own. The baboons fight their own. They can destroy their own. And they say, wow, look at these gorillas, they act the same. The baboons, they act the same. Go study those animals, because I had to do that study too. And like, okay, now they started to say, oh, maybe human beings evolved from monkeys to black people and then to white people. Why? Because the baboons and the gorilla eat their own, or the baboons and the gorilla fight their own, right? Can destroy their own. And then now we see the black people selling their own, and then the white people don't do that. The Asians will acquiesce maybe to colonialism and all that, but if you look at the white people, they don't sell their own. So they can measure through this channel that this is how humans evolve over time. You see how these theories are crazy? They're like, okay, if a gorilla can fight their own, destroy their own, and then we see black people, they can sell their own, and then the Asian people will acquiesce to colonialism to an extent. The white people will not allow themselves to be colonized and preserve their own. Then by default, this is how the human evolution look like. This is how they create theories. Do you see research work? This is how they put it. And they start believing that. And then, oh, from this behavior, if we can see this black man, we understand how society is formed. People have to come together. They have to agree as one. And then they go on to build stuff. So if these black people can sell their own, then there is no way that they build this pyramid in Egypt. This is the simplification of the transatlantic slavery and slave trade. Like just trying to box everyone with black skin in one box. And so we are coming to say, no, not every one in Africa sold slaves, and not every community was around the coast, and not everyone did that. So we dispel this myth. I know that even in the Southwest, it's not every tribe in the Southwest that sold slaves, predominantly. It's not every. It's a generalization, but we understand. Does that make sense? So, we come from Nubia. Now we find ourselves in the heart of sub-Saharan Africa, in the Highlands, Now we were victims of slavery and slave trade. Now the generalization is, oh, everybody in here is the same like that. No. For instance, even the Yaoundé and the Petit Boulou people, they were not really into slavery and slave trade like that. And people might say, oh, it's because maybe their geographical location, if the white man encountered them, then we would have known. If they say, yeah, we can see through the corruption today that it's possible that they would have sold slaves. Do you understand? So that brother has said it right. And this is the consequence of slavery and slave trade. Black people are being seen inferior everywhere around the world. This is a very smart lawyer. Let him share his story. Went to Harvard Law School. He's a lawyer. Goes to court. And yet is still being looked down upon because of the color of his skin. This is the compound effect of slavery and slave trade. Let's take a listen.
Went to Harvard Law School. I've got a lot of degrees and awards. I've won cases at the U.S. Supreme Court, and I've been in courtrooms representing clients, getting there early, sitting at defense counsel's table, where the judge will walk in and immediately get mad at me. The judge will look at me and say, hey, you get back out there in the hallway. I don't want any defendants sitting in my courtroom without their lawyer. And I have to stand up and say, well, I'm sorry, Your Honor. I am the lawyer. I didn't introduce myself. My name is Brian Stevenson. I have to try to de-escalate this situation. And I was doing that recently. I was in a courtroom in the Midwest, and the judge started laughing, but it wasn't an apologetic laugh. And it kind of angered me. And the prosecutor started laughing. They thought it was so funny. And I was sitting there getting angry. And then I thought, oh no, Brian, you can't get angry. You need to smile. You may need to laugh. And I felt that way. I thought that way because my client was not going to be able to leave that county. I was able to leave that county and never come back based on the way I was treated if I chose to do that. But my client was going to have to stay there. So when they were laughing, I smiled.
My people, some have not gotten to this stage and will not in their lifetime. The restoration of the Tikar heritage is going to stretch to the Americas, to the Caribbeans, and other parts of the world. This is a first step towards solving a global issue or a global crisis like racism. Restoring the dignity of black people. When you start thinking that way, that is how you can even have real international support. You must put in the work first. You don't just come out and say you want to solve global problems. You see my train of thought? Like I said, sometimes you think too much, you read too much, study too much, and you're trying to get a fraction of it into somebody's head on the other side. This is an attempt to solve a global issue by looking at the lineage of a specific group of people, seeing where they reside today, what has happened with them over time, through slavery, slave trade, and colonialism, and how they went full circle to found themselves back and say, we are descendants of black pharaohs that ruled Egypt. And our actions, our way of life, our thinking, the way we walk, our work ethic and everything can prove that we came from this lineage. Almost all the individuals captured from our land still possess the same energy in America, in Brazil. And I've shown you evidence. This is how you separate yourself. And because of that, you can be able to help the rest. So you come out so you can even help others. So we are solving a global problem here. And some are thinking, oh, the fight is going to be Northwest against 9 regions. No. Let me show you the map of this battle. The map of this battle is really Northwest, West region support, right? Yaoundé, Betua, these are the individuals that were affected by slavery and slave trade in this geographical location. The North did the trans-Arab slave trade. So they've hurt us too. But these are the individuals. We have African Americans, the Europeans that have been blamed single-handedly for slavery and slave trade. They were the buyers. Now we are addressing the sellers to find the root cause of the problem, so we can teach this and let this never repeat itself again through betrayal, and it has turned to corruption and bad government across Africa, across sub-Saharan Africa. It's not an attack. It's to address a historical issue that affects us everywhere we go around the world. It is bigger than your Amazonian fight, bigger than just the restoration of the Tikar heritage. This is sending a strong message to the world that black people did play a role for the advancement of modern civilization. And we don't generalize every black man to be subhuman because they come from sub-Saharan Africa. So we are changing the image of how black people are being perceived globally. And that is why we present a work like this, so that it can be respected and honored. And we will go on to show how the United Kingdoms of Tikar will help solve global problems. It's not just a nation for us, so that black for us. No, it's a nation for Africa. It's a nation for the world. And we will solve many global issues through this country. The first nation to restore itself before colonization. A nation that existed, a group of people that existed, had a way of life, had a belief system before colonization. That is what we are restoring through the United Kingdoms of Tikar. Fair?
To constantly navigate presumptions of dangerousness and guilt because of your color, when you have to tell your children how to survive a police encounter, what to do and what not to do, how they can't do the things that their white friends can do because they're going to be burdened with this presumption. When you have to constantly navigate this world, it's exhausting. And I want something better. I want something better for everybody. And that's why the commitment to truth-telling, the commitment to building institutions that help us understand the harms of history is such a priority.
We have to build institutions that help us tell the truth about our history, because it is very important. That is a Harvard graduate, a lawyer that is being minimized and despised in the United States of America because of how he looks. How did that brother get here? Through slavery and slave trade. Trying to solve colonialism without solving slavery and slave trade. That is the place where Africans, they are stuck. You must solve slavery and slave trade, address it properly, teach it, and then it will adjust the character of the people in this area. And then colonialism will just collapse. And all this bad government in Africa will just fall when slavery and slave trade is properly addressed. Fair? Yeah. And our brothers here, they are struggling with that. We cannot focus on ourselves only, trying to solve global problems. You really get help. Trying to fix only your own issue, nobody comes for you. Let's listen to a young person share the Tikar story. I think it was quite fascinating when this clip was sent to me, and we'll wrap up this session with this video. This is what we need right now on social media. Young people telling the Tikar story everywhere. On social media, we should be seeing this on every platform. This is number one step. Sensitization. Information in the head changes everything. Let's take a listen.
Nsot people in the northwest region of Cameroon trace their origins to a remarkable woman named Gonso. She was a princess of the Tikar people who lived in what is now the Adamawa region. A dispute over succession forced her to leave her homeland with her two brothers, Nchoroyen and Be. and their followers. During the journey, the siblings went separate ways, and her brothers even cut a bridge behind them to prevent her from continuing. It is said that Ngonso, however, was guided by a python, which led her safely through forests and rivers, showing her the path to Kifem, her future homeland. While Ngonso traveled west and founded the Nsok Kingdom in what is now Kumbo, her brother Nchareyen went on to establish what is known today as the Bamon Kingdom. Ngonso's leadership and courage helped her people settle and thrive, and the name Nsok is believed to come from her own name, meaning mother of the Nsok people. Ngonso became the founding mother and a central figure in Nsok culture and spirituality. A sacred wooden statue covered in cowrie shells represented her presence and the blessing of her people. Tragically, in 1902, during a German punitive expedition, Captain Kurt von Pavel seized this statue and took it to the Berlin Ethnological Museum, where it remained for over a century. For generations, the Nsok people called for its return. In 2022, Germany acknowledged the significance of Ngonso's statue and began the process of restitution. Today, her story is not just history, it is a symbol of identity, resilience, and the enduring legacy of a woman whose